And now I'd like to welcome to the stage Elisa Olivares, Will Thompson, Amy Langren, and Katie Merrington from Sheffield. A group of Scouse Flowerhouse people really enjoyed the Talking Plants Symposium, which was brought together last year, which has been in large part an inspiration for us today. But the relationship goes back with Sheffield a long time, and we're delighted to welcome Elisa and colleagues to the stage. So.
Thank you, Polly. I'm going to put this a little bit lower. Don't worry, it's okay. I can't do tiptoes. Oh, thank you. That's excellent. Yes. Thank you very much. So, hello everyone. I'm coming here to talk a little bit about Nigel. I wish I was here under different circumstances, but we can all celebrate his amazing work. When Richard and Polly asked me to talk a little bit about him, I didn't know where to start because, with such a vast career, so much impact he had on all of us, it was quite overwhelming. But then I thought, well, I knew Nigel because he was my teacher, he was my academic tutor, so I think I need to talk from that perspective, my own experience. There were lots of different Nigels, and I think you all met a different one. We all met a different one. But today I'm going to talk about Nigel, the planting designer, the gardener, and as well the professor of planting design, urban horticulture and vegetation technology in the University of Sheffield. That is how I got to know him, when I got into the program that him and James Kitchmo drove in the university and become so successful and so world-renowned. I approached Nigel as a graduate student, wanting to work with Mexican species on green roofs. And he not only opened the doors for me to do that, but he opened the doors to this amazing community, to lots of work on public spaces, and to learn about how garden design, planting design, gardening can help enhance communities and make communities and bring nature back to cities. And he not only opened those doors to me, but to hundreds, and I could say maybe thousands of students who went through the university, through his worldwide workshops, and he touched us all. Nigel enjoyed teaching, and he had a great commitment with his students. I had the privilege to teach by his side with Fiona McQuaid, his longtime tutor. And his modules were a space of experimentation and bold ideas, where students were encouraged to think about planting design to create better worlds. I think I haven't moved my slides because I'm quite nervous. And he encouraged us to think bold, but to think about people and think about wildlife and non-humans as well. For Nigel, the planting design area of landscape architecture was what made landscape architecture different from architecture and urbanism. Landscape architects have the skills and the knowledge to bring nature back to the cities and to make better spaces for humans and to remind us that we are part of nature. We're not different from it. Planting design for Nigel was a type of art, and that was something very important for him, to understand and make students aware that planting design had rhythm, had repetition, like music, but as well enveloped our environments, and we could make the visitors to be inside that piece of art. But as well, or different from many arts, planting design, gardening, needs a lot of get tuned into nature. Look at the changes that happen every day, every week, every month, every week, every 100 years. Some changes that we cannot grasp, and that sometimes for students is a little bit difficult when, we're young, or they are young, not me, and with the change they have seen usually is the change of themselves, but not the change of the landscape. But Nigel had that quality and that ability to show the students the changes that happen in nature, to make us aware and open our eyes to that. Nigel used his personal journey and how, since he was a teenager, to teach planting design. He would tell students how he loved to visit woodlands full of wildflowers in the springtime, meadows in summer, hedges full of apples and fruits, and the changes in autumn with the different colors. It was that joy and uplifting that he felt in those places that he wanted to bring into cities with his planting design. He used nature as a guide by learning from planting communities in the wild, how these communities are fitted to the site, and how they have developed through different pressures and stresses. But he also thought and said continuously that planting design is a tool to bring the whole ecosystem, and not only the plants, but as well the wood, the fungi, the invertebrates, all the other creatures that live within those spaces. Nevertheless, a very important element for him was to make people feel immersed and surrounded by the landscape. Nigel talked about landscape signatures. Nigel had the idea that a successful design was one in which the visitors would not only be passive, but they would, or we would experience like being in the middle of a forest or a meadow, surrounded by green, where actors actively participate, like smelling, hearing, and feeling around the life in the garden. Planting design as a tool to create a landscape where we can be overwhelmed by beauty and life. To achieve this, Nigel talked about landscape signatures. What are those elements from the landscape that can inspire and connect and bring the concept behind a place? This is some of the signatures he used, like the Scottish sand dunes, and that we saw in some of his last designs. For Nigel, it was imperative to bring nature back to people. He brought the beauty, the fascination, and the overwhelming experience of being immersed in nature back to the people. He brought back to all of us who work from 9 to 5, who are tired from coming from our work with stress, everyday life, all our personal problems. But then going back to your house and bringing nature back to your doorsteps and make us overwhelmed again and make us in contact again with nature. Nigel always said that he didn't become a designer by himself. He always makes sure to thank and to pay tribute to the people that grew with him and with who he shared ideas. In the university was James Hitchmer, Andy Clayton, but as well outside the university he had people like Richard Fergus, John Little, Noel Kingsbury, Annie Guilford. This list is endless. Amy, Katie, Will, and all the students that I'm sure we have a lot of alumni that is here and that spend time to Nigel. And Nigel always took their voices as inspiration as well. So thank you, Nigel, for opening the doors back to nature into our cities. And thank you very much to everyone in here.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Elise. That was so wonderful to start just with a moment to think about Nigel, because he was such a cultivator, wasn't he? Not just of plants, but of this whole wonderful world of people. We've traveled from across the Pennines, and it was quite amazing to get up at dawn and it was already light. We're nearly at the solstice, the longest day. And it felt particularly joyful to get up at that sunny dawn and come here to this hopeful event. Because plants and growing and nature, it's the hope and the light that we need. So big thanks to Polly and Richard and everyone for bringing us together and putting this on. And so me, Amy and Will, we're from Talking Plants over in Sheffield. And we've been running a few years now, since from around about the pandemic. And partly, you know, we're part of all that nurture that came from Nigel, that really we exist, because we're sort of within that world and network of Sheffield. And at the end of the pandemic, Will's a garden designer, Amy's a landscape architect, I'm a gardener, and we'd all been on our own, hadn't we? Shut on our own, trying to work away, quite lonely, to be honest. And there was an amazing party that happened to say goodbye to, do you know Professor Sally O'Halloran? She used to work with Nigel at Sheffield, and she got an amazing job in Norway to become a professor. So she had a lovely leaving party in a cinema. And we happened to go there, and Amy and Will didn't know each other, but they got chatting, and they thought, this is so wonderful to have all these plants, people together in a room. Why don't we just make this happen more often? And Amy and Will had this idea, and then they wrote me in as the first speaker. And really their aims were these. They wanted to bring people together, champion biodiversity, raise new voices, share knowledge, and just provide connection. So that's what we started.
So we want to share a little bit about how we've done it, because we think it's important that other people can set up as easily as we have in their areas. So how have we made an event that, I mean, it sells out relatively often in Sheffield, and it's very popular. So how do you make an event that is popular and diverse and welcomes in a good crowd of people? So the first one is affordability. So we really wanted to have a lot of people come who are professionals, gardeners, designers, students, retirees. And so we decided straight away we're going to keep it as cheap as possible. So our tickets are about £6 to £8, depending on whether you're a student or not, which is, you know, you can't get much for that much nowadays. And the idea straight off was that it wasn't to make a profit. We are just doing it for the joy of being with other plants people. But I understand that a lot of work goes into that kind of thing, and so we tried to make it as simple as possible. So we always wanted to make sure that we could spend the profits on paying our speakers, paying their expenses, and we tried to have a meal with them before the evening to keep it fun. With so little money behind the event, we decided we had to be a bit creative about how we got a venue. And so one of the things we did is that we partnered with some venues in Sheffield. A lot of venues and pubs are closing in today's world, and so we thought if we partnered with venues that would bring a crowd of about 100 people to a kind of venue on a midweek night, then that would get them a lot of revenue. So again, it was kind of a supporting of a local business, which was kind of at the heart of how we set up. And we also thought if we set up somewhere that's an evening venue, professional people can come, which was very important to us, that we can share knowledge and we can increase knowledge within our industry. So, as we said, how did we get our speakers? So our first speaker was Katie. So when you're setting up, you need to think of ways that you can get these speakers without having a lot of revenue behind us, and Katie very kindly spoke to us, decided to speak to us for free. And then we, in our first few events, had evenings where we would set up kind of pet charcuterie events where we'd have lots of people talk, but just for short amounts of time. And we found that that was a really nice way of promoting voices of people who might not be used to speaking publicly, who might feel like a lot of pressure from having to do a whole evening. And they started to build our crowds for us. And also that gave, young designers or people who maybe weren't getting opportunities, the opportunity to stand up and talk about what they're doing. We also linked with the university, and we linked with Nigel, so that if people were coming to the university to talk, we could get them to talk at the same time. So it was coming up with inventive ways of getting speakers to come to us, so that eventually the word spread, and we started to be able to get some, people from all over the UK. And I think simplicity is important when you're doing these things. I'm sure everyone at Scouse Flowerhouse knows a lot of organisation goes into these things. If you can make it as simple as possible, a repeatable event with a simple flyer, using things like Eventbrite, so that it doesn't create a lot of admin and it is just an enjoyable experience that you can fully sit back and relax at. That's very important. So I think two of the most important things about this is making the right choices for the aims of what we set up to do. So some of the things that we did when we set up our symposium last year, which some of you may have attended, was we decided that the people that we'd employ at the event to work there were young people from a local horticultural charity who were looking for opportunities to get into work. We worked with we invested in the local economy, so we had a local graphic designer design our flyers for us. We had a local musician play, similar to today, who was very popular. We linked up with local nurseries to do plant sales, and we linked up with a local book supplier as well, who, if anyone's doing a book tour and comes to speak to us, they provide the books. And these are just some of the people who have contributed to our events and some of the different charities and organisations that have spoken for us. And finally, creating a kind of event like this, eventually we made a network and we made a lot of friendships with people, and there's a lot of goodwill in that. And so we had lovely things like Dean from Hooton's Walled Nursery provided planting displays for us at our symposium. People who regularly come to the Sheffield Talking Plants, came and did the teas and coffees for us and helped out at the events. People approach us with their ideas and feel that it's a welcome space to do that. And lots of people have given us that advice too.
Yeah, so thanks again for having us, guys. It's great to be in Liverpool. So the future of Talking Plants, really, we just want to be doing more of the same, trying to reach as many people as possible. And I think a lot of the professional development we have in horticulture, often it can be very expensive to go to events. And I know a lot of younger gardeners who would say, I'd love to go and see that person speak, but I can't afford it, it's just too expensive. So we want to kind of run events that are really affordable, provide more bursaries and cheap tickets, especially for those that are just getting into the industry. Really open the doors to as many people as we can that they've got an interest in plants. And it's been one of the great joys, actually, at our evenings, now seeing that all these people are meeting each other. I know friends who are gardeners or landscapers or designers that are now employing people that have turned up at Talking Plants, and they've wanted to get into the industry and they've got talking, and now they're working together. So there is this great network of people now who can call each other up and help each other out and learn from each other, which is exactly what we really set out to do. The diverse and kind of more inclusive side of things in horticulture as well, I think, has always been an issue, and we want to really dig deeper into that and think of more creative ways to get people through our doors and linking up with jobs in the industry. So we're going to be putting on more events. We'll have a whole autumn program going through the winter of different speakers. And I think with our speakers, it's really important for us that we have speakers that are delivering knowledge that people can take away into their jobs. Our symposium was called Digging into the Detail, and the brief to all the speakers was, we don't want big fancy background stories, we don't want lots of waffle, people just showing off nice fancy pictures of perfect gardens. We want real details of what went wrong, how could you do things better, what information can you use and put back into your work. So it was really, that was the focus of the symposium. And we're very keen to arm people with the best knowledge they can, especially about how we can do things in a more environmentally friendly way, do things for biodiversity, do things for communities as well. So linking with groups like over here in Liverpool is exactly what we want to be doing. And also linking with we've had other people coming up to us saying, I want to get Talking Plants going in Newcastle or Scotland, and we're helping them, facilitating them with the information that we have on how we've done it ourselves to get them going. So that's the future really. So keep an eye out. We're on Instagram. We've got a website which is not being updated very often, so maybe Instagram's the better place to look. Hopefully we'll see you at some events. We might also start travelling and going to a few other cities, so maybe we can do a Liverpool Talking Plants in the future for sure. And then looking at doing maybe some specialist days. Like we would really love to do a day like this, just completely focused on native plants and how people can use native plants and wildflowers in a very practical sense, because a lot of garden designers we find just have a bit of a blind spot with native plants, and we really need to be championing that. So yeah, that's basically it. And I'm just going to now, there's going to be a short video of another of our Sheffield heroes, who's now left Sheffield, but has had a big influence, is James Hitchmo with a message for us all. Thank you.
Hello, I'm James Hitchmore. I was hoping to speak at the assembly, but unfortunately I can't do the days. So it's a little hello from me. And I think it's fantastic that at long last flowers are being seen as a really significant part of infrastructure, not only for people, for their well-being and just feeling good about themselves. I sit here every morning and I have the privilege to be able to look at the scene and the flowers, and it's really good for me, and I'm sure that would be true for anyone else. It's also obviously really important for wildlife, for pollinators, just for resources going into ecosystems. So it's fantastic that this event's happening, and I hope you have a great day, and I wish I was with you, but hey ho.